Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you all to today's session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. As with every single day in the past few weeks, I will remind you once again, there is a great chance for all of you to have a one-on-one counseling session with our experts. If you need any help in your UPSC preparation, all that you need to do is go to the link of the Google form given in the description of the video. Fill up that form and one of our experts will get in touch with you to help you navigate any issue that you have in your UPSC preparation journey. With that out of the way, let's see what are the topics that we have for today's discussion. This is what we'll be discussing today. The first topic is about how Indian aviation needs a reality check. As per the author here, if you look at the past few events in the aviation industry, not just in India but around the world, specifically what happened in Japan, there is a need for India to buckle up and make sure our safety norms are in place. Second article is about the concept of structured negotiation. What exactly is this? How does it work? How can it help us to ensure that the disability rights are provided to the people who deserve them? The third topic is about a recent report in Lancet talking about child marriages in India in different states, where it has specifically pointed out towards the increase in the number of child marriages taking place in West Bengal. From the parents' point of view, from the main page of the Hindu newspaper, from Jammu and Kashmir, as you know, the state does not have a legislative assembly. It did have a panchayat. The panchayat's tenure also is about to get over tomorrow. So after tomorrow, Jammu Kashmir Union Territory will not even have a panchayat. What is the way forward? When do we expect the panchayat elections? That is this article. And then in the last article, there is a concept of Panspermia. What we'll be discussing what that is. How does it hold the key for us to understand how did life originate on our planet? So let's begin with the very first topic, which is about aviation. Now, the context of this article, the reason why this article is written is with respect to what happened in Japan. Now, I'm sure all of you would have read the news, would have seen the news. Just in case you are not aware, what happened in Japan just a few days back was on 2nd of Jan, there was an aircraft in Japan that landed, and when it landed at Tokyo, it crashed with another aircraft on the same runway. That other aircraft was the Coast Guard aircraft. Now, in this civil aircraft which landed at that particular runway, all 379 members were rescued, although the aircraft burned to flames. There was fire all around the plane, but even then, the passengers showed a great deal of patience. They showed a great deal of discipline. They did not create any chaos. They followed the instructions. All of them were evacuated. However, that does not mean that everyone was safe. People traveling in the Coast Guard aircraft, 5 of them passed away. So 5 people died in the Coast Guard aircraft, but in the civilian aircraft, all 379 people were evacuated. Now, the author here, who is an aviation expert, says that this should be counted as a great success. It's an example that other countries should follow. Because usually, you will see that whenever there is any issue in the aircraft, usually a lot of issues in the aircraft occur when the aircraft is landing. That is usually the most complex part of flying the aircraft. So when the aircraft lands, a lot of time the aircraft skids, a lot of time there is fire, a lot of time there's an issue in the landing gear or tire or brakes, etc. Usually you will see the passengers panicking. The first reaction of the passenger is whenever they're asked to evacuate, whenever they're asked to go out of the aircraft, first of all what they do is they try to first get hold of their bag. Whatever they would have kept in the cabin, they first try to take out the bag, and that creates a lot of problem. Because when you start to take out your bag, you create a lot of chaos, you don't get enough space for the people to leave. What happened in this case of Japan was, none of the passengers tried to take out their handbag. They did as they were instructed. They were told to remain seated. They were then told to vacate one by one, and all of them thus were successfully evacuated. Now, this is not something that we usually see. The author here has given multiple examples. The author here says that if you look at how the aircrafts today are designed, there are a lot of different safety checks that are ensured before an aircraft is used by any company. For example, when Boeing or Airbus, etc. make an aircraft, what they have to do is they have to prove that their aircraft is safe enough to evacuate all the passengers within 90 seconds, that too only using half of the exit doors. Understand this. If, for example, let's say that an aircraft catches fire, it is very obvious that not all the doors of the aircraft would be usable. If there's fire outside one door, obviously you can't open that door. So in the worst case scenario, it is assumed that only half of the doors can be opened. So only if an aircraft is built in a manner that within 90 seconds you can evacuate all the passengers using half of the exits, only then that aircraft will be used by the airlines. And that was done in this case also. In this case also, only 3 exits were available out of the 6. And all these passengers were evacuated. This is something to be applauded. However, if you look at the other incidents that have happened, that have taken place, many of them do not even come in the news, because the unfortunate part is only those incidents make the news where people lose their lives. So we wait for such an incident to happen. The smaller instances where we should take care, these are not even reported. For example, the author here gives an example of what happened on December 20, 2023. There was an Air India flight from Kochi to Dubai, and the landing in Dubai was a hard landing. Now, what is hard landing? See, hard landing means whenever the aircraft is actually landing, the aircraft has to ensure that the speed is reduced to a certain level so that the impact of the landing is not harmful. Because if the landing is very hard, if it has a lot of impact, it can damage the aircraft. Thus, it can damage the people as well. It can very easily cause friction, which will lead to fire, because the aircraft will have fuel also. So landing again is very, very important. So this aircraft landed in Dubai. It was a hard landing. It was a very serious incident, but even then it was not reported. It was only after 10 days that the authorities were told that something like this has happened. Now, this is where we have to understand that if we don't take serious action against these smaller instances, we are just waiting for a big event to happen. The author here holds the DGCA responsible, the Directorate General in this case of Civil Aviation, which is the statutory body in India responsible for maintaining safety in civil aviation. The author says that the DGCA has been very lackluster, especially with respect to Air India. Now, please understand the context here. Air India used to be for a very long time a government enterprise. So, DGCA has had a history that it may have very strong standards for private airlines, but it does not hold up the same standards for Air India as such. This is where the mismatch was. Now, Air India obviously is not a government entity, but even then DGCA needs to be much more careful, much more stringent. The author here, who, as I said, himself is an aviation expert, tells about one more problem. He says that if you analyze a lot of these accidents that have taken place in the past 3 or 4 decades, there are some very common factors that you will be able to notice. First common factor is, in many cases, the pilots were fatigued. For example, let's assume there is a flight going from Delhi to Mumbai. Let's say it's a 2-hour flight. So let's assume at 8 a.m. from Delhi you fly and you land in Mumbai at 10 a.m. Now, there will be boarding of the passengers again. The aircraft will again fly back to Delhi. So let's assume at 11 a.m. again, you fly from Mumbai and you come to Delhi at 1 p.m. Then again, you take a rest of 1 hour. At 2 p.m. you again start, and then at 4 p.m. you end up in Mumbai. So what happens in this case is, there's a lot of fatigue that sets in. Yes, you might assume only 2 hours of flying would not really have an issue, but if you have taken a flight, you would understand, even if you fly for 3 hours or 4 hours, it takes a toll on your body. And the same happens with the pilots as well. So in certain cases, there are issues of pilots feeling fatigued. And then there is another big issue. The other big issue is, what aircrafts are they flying? Now, if you look at the companies that manufacture the aircrafts, mainly the aircraft market, civil aviation market, is dominated by 2 big companies. One is Boeing and the other is Airbus. Most of the market, a majority of civil aviation market, the aircraft that you fly, are either made by Boeing or made by Airbus. Now, what happens is, If let's say someone is becoming a pilot and they are being given training, they will be given training and they will specialize in a certain aircraft. Even in Boeing, there will be tens of different models. In Airbus also, they would have tens of different models. Like for example, A320, Boeing would have their own, let's say 777, 777 MAX, etc. So every company has their own different models. When a pilot specializes, when a pilot trains, he or she specializes in a specific aircraft. It's like saying that when you learn a car on a certain car. Let's say you learn a car on i10, i20 or Tata Tiago or Nexon or whatever. Now with cars, the good part is even if you learn a car on one single model, you would be able to drive in the other models as well, because mostly the controls remain the same. Just that the gear panel may be different, but mostly the controls remain the same. But with aircrafts, that is not true. Especially when you are intermixing pilots of Boeing and Airbus. There are certain controls, as per the author, which are exactly the opposite in Boeing as compared to Airbus. So if a pilot is used to how to land an Airbus aircraft, he or she may commit this mistake that while landing a Boeing aircraft, they may do the opposite. And that has also led to all these troubles. Ideally, it should not happen. Ideally, only those pilots should be given the aircraft who have mastered that particular aircraft. But in many cases, the airlines don't pay attention. Because for the airlines, the most important thing is how to get the most productivity out of the pilot. If they think that the pilot right now is available and they see that an aircraft is available, they will make sure that that pilot is assigned to that aircraft without paying attention to the expertise. This is also where DGCA has to be very, very, very careful. So again, two important issues. First, the fatigue of the pilots. We have to make sure that their working hours are taken care of, they are not overstressed. And second, no intermixing. We have to make sure only the pilots trained for a specific aircraft are allowed to fly that aircraft. Yes, there are more than one pilot. There are at least two pilots usually when you fly domestic. When you fly international on long routes, the airline may have, or the plane may have 3 pilots or even 4 pilots in certain cases on very, very long route flights. But even then, you have to make sure that the pilots who are given the responsibility of the aircraft at the end of the day are expert in that. Now, what about the DGCA? What is this body all about? What does it do? As I said, DGCA is a body that you keep on hearing whenever there is an issue about civil aviation. Whenever there is a problem about some airlines not refunding money to passengers, some airlines not fulfilling their promises, you will see DGCA coming in the news, imposing fines or DGCA making statements. This DGCA, in fact, is a statutory body responsible for a lot of things for our civil aviation. It stands for Directorate General of Civil Aviation. It is responsible to regulate transport services within India, from India, and also enforce all the civil regulations, including safety and airworthiness. So it talks about what are the kind of aircrafts that will be allowed to fly. They are the ones who register the aircrafts. Not just this, they register the pilots as well. Register them. Apart from them, the aircraft maintenance engineers, flight engineers, they license the air traffic controllers. So the entire ecosystem that is required to run this civil aviation, the pilots, the planes, air traffic controllers, engineers, all of them are licensed by the DGCA. So they are the ones who are responsible in case there is any hiccup in the civil aviation sphere. They are the ones who have to take action and the responsibility. Now, in 2016, the Government of India released the National Civil Aviation Policy. It has a lot of pointers, but for the purpose of this article, I just wanted to focus on what did this policy say about safety. India has been focusing a lot on civil aviation. It's a booming field. Every year, the number of people taking flights in India are increasing. A lot more people are shifting from trains to flights, especially over long distances. It is becoming more affordable to fly. We are seeing more airlines coming in. And this is why the government also is focusing on this sector. So in 2016, when this policy was released, this policy had certain specific pointers about the safety provision that the government has to keep in mind. For example, DGCA will be given administrative and financial autonomy over to have an safety oversight of the civil aviation system. It will ensure there is a single window system for all the transactions, queries, etc. There should be prompt reporting of any incident. Now, this is something that did not happen in this Dubai case. When the flight landed in Dubai from Kochi, although it was not a safe landing, it was reported only after 10 days. So it was violated here. They will also have Aircraft Incident Investigation Bureau. It will be strengthened. It will take up all these investigations as and when the case is required, and it is referred to them under this particular policy. This was our first article. The second article of the day is based on the concept of structured negotiations. Now, what is structured negotiations? Let me first explain the concept to you so that you can understand. So, this is a concept that came up about 20 years ago in the US. This is a concept that was initiated by certain social workers who were mainly working for the rights of the disabled. So, what happens is a lot of people who are suffering from some form of disability. Either, let's say, they can't see, or they can't hear, or they can't walk. They have a lot of issue in day-to-day life. I'll give you a very simple example. Let's assume that you go to the market and you want to buy a product. Now, when you go to a shopping store, you want to buy something, you can easily look at that package, you can look at what is the MRP, you can look at the expiry date, etc. Now, imagine if a person is blind or the person can't see properly. How would that person now get to know about that product? How would the person get to know what is the MRP, what is the expiry date, how does the packaging look like, etc., etc. So, there is a certain responsibility that the corporates have, and I'm not just talking about the packaging part, this is just an example. There's a responsibility that the corporates have, that the companies have, towards the customers that are suffering from some sort of disability. This has to be fulfilled by the companies. Now, how do the companies do that? Many nations have made laws. India also have a Disability Act. One way to do this is, if the company is not following the law, you take them to the court. You tell the company, I'll take you to the court if you don't follow this law. But as per the expert, this is not the best way forward. The best way forward, rather than taking the company to the court, is to have what you call as structured negotiations. Structured negotiation in simple terms means bring the company on table, have a discussion with the company, a closed discussion, no one should get to know about it. Rather than forcing the company to actually abide by certain rules, make them understand its importance. Make them understand the fact that it is important for them as well. That if they make these changes, they will also increase their business. If they make these changes, their customer base will increase. So rather than forcing the companies to actually make changes and make their products disabled friendly, or to make their products in a way that it's more accessible, rather than that, rather than taking them to the court or using the force of law, have negotiations with them. These are called structured negotiations. Make them understand its importance. Make them understand how it will help add value to their own business in the long run. That will always be a much better option. This is called as structured negotiation. Now, structured negotiation, as I said, it came up specifically in the context of the rights of the disabled. Even today, it is usually used with respect to the rights of disabled only. But you can use this phrase somewhere else as well. You can use this phrase in other cases as well. Wherever you think a company is not abiding by certain rules, rather than taking them to the court, rather than harassing them or telling them that we will file a case against you, it's better to go ahead with structured negotiation. As I said, it involves inviting those service providers who are defaulting, invite them to a negotiating table rather than to the court, impress upon them the benefits of complying with these laws. Means try to convince them how it is good for them if they would be able to comply with it. I'll give you a very simple example. I'm sure all of you would have heard of Walmart. So this huge supermarket chain that we have in the US, the largest one, the most famous one. Now, a lot of people, thousands and lakhs of people go to supermarkets every day. If you don't have an issue in walking, you would not even notice if it has stairs or it has a ramp. If you can walk, you would not mind climbing certain stairs. But think of someone who cannot walk. Think of someone, let's say, who is on a wheelchair. For that person, even 3 or 4 steps of stairs is a big, big problem. For them, they obviously would want the ramp. This small little change can make a big difference to them. Now, many companies don't do that. Either they have not thought of it, or either they thought that why do we build that? Let's build stairs only. Now, rather than taking them to the court, make them understand that, see, it is important for you. If you build a ramp, you are the ones who will gain more customers. So many people can't come to your shop just because they can't climb the stairs. So what if you build a ramp? So that is how structured negotiations work. So in case of Walmart, etc., for example, they have been convinced to create accessible prescription bottles. Means basically bottles where, again, medicines are being sold. Same problem. How do you see what is written on that bottle? If you are blind, you can't see that. So Walmart and all these other companies which sell medicines in the US have been convinced by the activists that you should make bottles which has certain braille, so that even the ones who are blind through that impression can understand what is written on those bottles. Similarly, a lot of different supermarket chains, offices have been convinced in the US to have automated teller machines which speak so that they can know whenever they press a button, they can hear what the button is saying. They also have been asked to build toilets which are specifically made for people who can't access other toilets. So all these things are done not by forcing them, but by ensuring that they understand the importance of inclusion, of following all these laws. Now, the defaulting service provider, the company, why would they agree to this? Because a company also knows that if they are taken to the court for violating the law, it will cost them more money. It will also bring them a lot of bad reputation. See, no company right now can afford to have a bad reputation. Companies, in fact, go to great lengths just to build a good, positive reputation. They might or might not be doing something good, but they all want to present that they are doing something good or building something great. So they spend a lot of money in marketing. If the company is taken to the court over such issues, it will be a negative point for them. So no company wants to go to the court anyways. Now, how does it work in India? In India, as you know, we have the Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016, under which the government of India has passed a lot of laws asking the companies to be more accessible, asking the infrastructure to be more accessible. It also talks about the disability. It also talks about the different types of disabilities included. It also talks about reservation in jobs, education institutions, etc. However, this law also talks about how to give punishment to those companies who are not abiding by that. Under this law, we have something called Chief Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities. This is the officer who will get all the complaints, or will register all the complaints against those who are not following these laws. This officer will investigate those service providers who are not following the law. This officer can also impose penalties for non-compliance as well. Recent case of this was that this particular office sent a notice to Paytm asking that their mobile app is not accessible for persons with disability. They should make changes to these mobile apps. Now, after they sent a notice, Paytm made certain changes and they complied with it. But a better way forward would have been not to send this official notice to Paytm. Rather than sending this official notice to the Paytm, rather than bringing a bad reputation to them that they are not following these laws, a better way forward, as per the author, would have been to invite people from Paytm, to invite the representatives from the Paytm on the negotiating table, talk to them, discuss this issue, and they would have complied with it happily. But rather than that, what we did was we had it openly. That is, the offer or the notice was sent openly. That should not be the norm going forward. This is why, as per the author, India needs to learn how to get this structured negotiation model, rather than asking our judiciary to take up all these cases, rather than burdening our judiciary. It is always better to ensure that we settle these negotiations in this kind of a redressal. Now, the reason why we still have a long way to go in giving the rights to the disabled people, not just in India but around the world, is because they may not form the priority in the minds of the policy makers. As per the author, only when the policy makers understand the problem that the people with disabilities suffer, only when the policy makers understand that the laws have to be implemented properly because it matters to a large section of the population and not just the policy makers. On the other hand, the corporates, the people running the companies, they must also realize that by making a very small change in how their infrastructure is, they can be much more inclusive. Only then we would be able to solve this problem. And structured negotiation is one way of going ahead. As I told you, structured negotiation is something that as a term came up about 20 years back, especially with respect to those social right workers who are working for the people with certain disability. The idea was, rather than taking the people to the court, rather than taking the companies to the court, bring the companies on the negotiating table, discuss with them their point of view, try and convince them about the need to have certain changes in their infrastructure so that they can understand and make those changes. Now, this structured negotiation bit is a part of a huge umbrella which is called Alternative Dispute Resolution, ADR. This is a phrase you might have heard in Indian polity especially. ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution. The idea is, in India specifically, the courts are overburdened. Crores and crores of cases are pending in the courts. It takes many years for the courts to decide a certain case. Now, if you have any dispute, it may be a property dispute on a personal level, it may be a corporate dispute, it may be any other dispute. Rather than going to the court, it is advisable to try and have an alternative dispute resolution. Means, try and see if you can resolve this dispute in some other way. For example, you can always take the example of Lok Adalat. That's what Lok Adalats also do. They try and make sure that these disputes, rather than going to the court, are resolved at the Lok Adalat level, and you can't even appeal after that. Similarly, especially to resolve corporate issues, issues of companies versus companies, there are many other mechanisms which are used. Conciliation, arbitration, mediation, negotiation, collaborative law, all these are a form of alternative dispute resolution. It is now increasingly becoming more and more effective and famous in India, but even today, these kind of techniques are much more used in the Western world as compared to India. But going forward, if we really want to reduce the burden on our judiciary, this is going to be the way forward. The next article that we have is about the rise in child marriages in West Bengal. Now, we are discussing this not specifically because of something that happened in West Bengal. It is because of a report that has come out. So, in the journal Lancet, a paper was published recently. The title of the paper was Prevalence of Girl and Boy Child Marriage Across States and Union Territories in India from 1993 to 2021, a repeated cross-sectional study. So, it talks about where exactly do the child marriages take place in India, both in terms of percentage and exact numbers. It says that there are 4 states especially where the number of child marriages is way beyond the satisfactory level. Bihar, West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra. In absolute terms, West Bengal is where most number of child marriages are taking place. The increase has also been seen mostly in West Bengal, although not to say that West Bengal is the only state responsible, as you can see here. Also, 1 in 5 girls are still married below the legal age in India. The largest absolute increase, as I said, was in West Bengal, where about 32.3% increase was seen, with over 5 lakh more girls getting married as children. Now, there are a lot of reasons because of which this happens. One of the reasons is, in a lot of societies, rural societies especially, girls are seen as financial burden by the parents. So the psyche that the parents have is that if not today, after some years, we anyways have to get the girl married. So why not get the girl married as early as possible so that our financial burden reduces. So you will see a lot of these child marriages actually taking place in those families where the earning potential is much lesser, where there is poverty that is much more prevalent. And the same numbers are being shown in the National Family Health Survey as well. In West Bengal, the number of girls getting married below the age of 18 remains the highest, that is at 41.6%. Now, child marriage, without any doubt, is a human rights violation. It's also recognized as a form of sexual and gender-based violence. See, when a girl gets married at a very young age, it now starts a very, very bad cycle. A girl is then forced to have sexual relationship at a very young age that might not be suitable for her body. A girl is then impregnated, forced to become a mother at a very young age that again takes a physical toll, not just on her body, but also it results in a lot of complications in the child as well that is born out of that marriage. All of that creates a big issue. And that is why there have been efforts made to reduce the number of child marriages in India. Both in West Bengal and in other parts of the country as well, multiple efforts have been made. In West Bengal, for example, in October 2013, the government launched something called the Kanya Shri Prakalpa. It's a cash transfer scheme for incentivizing schooling of all the teenage girls between 13 and 18. So between 13 and 18, if your girl child goes to the school, you will be incentivized, you will be given certain cash to ensure that till the age of 18 at least the girl comes to school so that the girl is not forced to get married. This program even became successful at the international level. It was recognized by the UN. It got the UN Public Service Award in 2017. Even this year, the budget of the West Bengal government has covered 81 lakh girls under this scheme. Now, there are two ways to look at it. One way to look at this is because of this cash transfer, the number of girls getting enrolled in West Bengal education system are increasing. In fact, right now in the West Bengal education system, more girls are enrolled as compared to boys because of such a scheme. But it has not led to reduction in the child marriages. So there is a mismatch there. The government thought that because more girls are getting to schools, they will get educated, they will learn the importance of education, might be they would resist getting married, but that is not happening. Apart from that, the government also has cash incentive scheme for marriage of the girls at an appropriate age called the Rupashri Prakalp. Certain families even avail cash benefit when they organize marriage of girls at an appropriate age. Now, the problem with this is, again, the implementation of the law has not been appropriate. Yes, child marriage has been banned in India. Minimum age for marriage of boys is 21, for girls it is 18. For those who start saying, no, sir, or age of marriage for girls is now 21, no. The government did introduce a bill to bring the minimum marriage age of girls to 21, but that bill has not passed so far. So as of today, the minimum age for marriage for girls today is still 18 only. For boys it is 21, for girls it is 18. But even then, we do have many cases of child marriage. In West Bengal in 2021, 105 cases were registered under Prevention of Child Marriage Act. But in other states, many more cases were registered, even though they have a lesser population than West Bengal, which again shows that somewhere down the line, implementation of the law has not been that great. Beyond West Bengal also, we have many other laws initiated by the government. We have something called the Prevention of Prohibition of Child Marriage Act of 2006, where legal age of marriage for boys is 21, for girls it is 18. The government has also appointed child marriage prohibition officers who will take care of all these complaints of child marriages, that will prevent child marriage, collect evidence, make a case against all these marriages. But even then, especially in the rural parts of the country, in most of the states, as you can see, child marriages still remain prevalent. At the national level also, multiple schemes have been introduced. There's something called the Dhan Lakshmi scheme. Again, it's a cash transfer scheme for the girl child. It gives insurance coverage as well. Government also runs schemes such as Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao program to empower girls to education. Other state governments have also done similar things. Odisha government, for example, they also have a program in which they track the attendance of the girls in the schools. They see from 10 to 19 years of age how many girls are coming to school. If a girl is absent from the school for a long time, there's inspection that happens at her place to keep a track. Not just this, the government also declares certain villages as free of child marriage if it has controlled the entire evil of child marriage, to encourage the villagers also to play a collective role. So different states are doing different things on their individual level, but even then overall the picture does not seem to be very, very optimistic going forward, considering that we have entered 2024. Then from the prelims point of view, we have a news from Jammu and Kashmir, where it's not something that has happened, it's just a reminder that from tomorrow the tenure of panchayats in Jammu Kashmir also will come to an end. The last panchayat elections took place in 2018. That tenure is going to end from tomorrow. So from tomorrow we'll have a situation where we will not have any elected representative of Jammu Kashmir within the state. There are still members of parliament from Jammu Kashmir, but we will not have an elected representative within the state because, as you know, the assembly elections have not happened for a long time. And there is no timeline for panchayat elections. Supreme Court did give a timeline to hold state elections, but there is still no timeline to have panchayat elections at least. Overall, the representatives of the panchayats in the union territory were about 30,000. They were chosen by the local residents in the last election that were held in 2018. Now, the problem with this is not just the representatives. The problem with this also is that since there are no panchayats, the fund that were transferred to the panchayat, they will also come to a standstill. So the development work that was taking place in the rural area, especially due to the fund transfer, that will also come to a halt. There were 25 lakh rupees allocated to each panchayat till the time that the panchayats were in order. Now that will also stop. So this is why it's a worrying sign for the locals in this union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Also, about 20 members from the District Development Council representing Jammu and Kashmir will come to an end. We will only now have members of parliament from Jammu and Kashmir. They are representing the state or the union territory in Rajya Sabha and in the Lok Sabha. There is no clarity on the future date of elections, either of the states or of the panchayat. The Supreme Court did set the limit that by 30th of September, by end of September, you should have elections. But the Home Minister has said that the statehood will only be granted back after the elections take place. So as per the Home Minister, first the election will take place and then we'll think about bringing back the statehood. But even then, again, this is a timeline given by the Supreme Court. The government or the election commission has not given any timeline to have elections in the union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. As I said earlier, the problem more than having no representatives is the problem of not having enough funds, because the funds were flowing to the rural areas through the panchayats only. After 73rd Amendment Act was implemented very recently in the union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, this is where this fear now has started in the rural areas that whatever development we had, it will also come to a standstill. Government on its own has said that don't worry, we will have some alternative arrangements, the development work will not stop. But whether and in what form does it continue, it remains to be seen. Now, what was the panchayat structure in Jammu and Kashmir? Let's have a look there as well. It had a 3-tier panchayat setup like most of the states. Panchayat level, block level and the district level. Now, this 3-tier structure, remember, was not available in the pre-370 article era. Article 370, as you know, gave special status. It was then removed or it was watered down, whatever you want to call it, when the reorganization of the state took place. The Home Ministry issued the executive orders under which the district development councils were also set up. The district development councils in the state had something called the Halka Panchayats and the Block Development Council, which completed the 3-tier structure. Halka here means an area that comprises a village or a number of villages determined by the government. So basically they were like the block structure. As you can see at the intermediate level in the 3-tier panchayat system, the intermediate level, that is very similar to the Halka structure, which had multiple villages where again people elected their own representatives. The last article that we have here is from Science on a concept called Panspermia. Now, all that you need to understand is what exactly is Panspermia. Now, for a very, very long time, scientists have been debating and discussing this idea of how did life start on Earth and on other different planets if there is life. There is a phrase called Panspermia. The assumption is, again, since it has not been proven, it's an assumption. The assumption is that there are certain microorganisms which are able to sustain very extreme conditions, pressure, temperature, etc., those microorganisms fly off from one planet to the other planet. They travel through the interplanetary space, they go to the other planet, and they are able to start the life there. From there, some particles may move around this universe and they may come to the third planet and they may start a life there. This entire journey is called Panspermia. This is the idea that was given first by the Greek philosopher Anaxagoras. He is the one who basically started, or who basically gave this term, which means that the life's potential in other planets is possible because the seeds travel between different planets. How? Because microorganisms can sustain extreme pressure, extreme temperature. In the universe, they travel from one planet to the other, and that is how the life starts on the other universe as well. A similar kind of idea was supported by other scientists recently in the 19th century as well, from Sweden, who suggested that yes, just like the radiation pressure from the sun reaches the other planets, similarly the microorganisms also could travel through the space. So this is the idea of panspermia. It has three stages. First, they escape from their home planet. Second, they transit through the interplanetary space. And third, they land on the other planet. The only thing that can be asked here from the UPSC exam is, they'll ask this word, panspermia. They'll ask you, what does it mean? So the answer would be travel of microorganisms or microparticles from one planet to the other. That's the idea which is defined by panspermia. That means the seeds from one planet actually go to the other planet, and that is how all the life may propagate in the future to the other planets as well. This brings us to the end of today's session. Here are a couple of practice questions. You can use our student answer writing portal to write these answers. You can check each other's answers as well on those portal, the link to which is given in the description of the video. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the next session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.